This is the creepy story of 23-year-old Fan Man Lee and how her head was found in a Hello Kitty doll. Fan Man Lee struggled with addiction for a very long time, and in 1997, she met 34-year-old Chan Man Lok, who was a drug dealer and a pimp. For that year, Fan Man Lee became desperate for money and drugs, so she stole $4,000 from Chan Man Lok. When he noticed that the money was missing, he asked his two friends to kidnap Fan Man Yi. Originally, his plan was to force Fan Man Yi into prostitution so she can pay him back, but his plan got out of hand and he did something much worse. Chan Man Lok, his friends, and his girlfriend began torturing Fan Man Yi. They tied her up and beat her, burned her, sexually assaulted her, and forced her to eat human feces. Eventually, Fan Man Yi passed away, so they cut her body into pieces, boiled it, and then fed some of the remaining pieces to the dogs. This is where things get super creepy. The three men decided to stuff Fan Man Yi's head into a Hello Kitty doll. And get this, the crime was eventually reported by Chan Man Lok's girlfriend. She basically told on herself because she claimed to be haunted by the ghost of a dead woman. She said that this ghost would not stop tormenting her until she confessed to the murder. It's been said that the building where Fan Man Yi passed away has been haunted for a very long time. People claim to see the figure of a woman walking in the hallways and also claim to hear the cries of a woman.
Imagine getting married only to be decapitated by your husband 3 months later. 21-year-old couple Jared and Angie got married in October 2022. Around 4 p.m. on the 11th of January, police were called to their home in Texas. Police made a grim discovery in the pair's bathroom after finding, quote, what appeared to be the head of the victim to be in the shower, end quote. Angie's body was discovered on the floor near the bed in a pool of blood with multiple stab wounds to her back. It was actually Jared's poor parents that initially made this discovery after entering the home. They then obviously alerted police to what they found. Jared was arrested and has confessed to killing his wife with a kitchen knife. Jared was actually captured on CCTV, casually stealing a bottle of beer from Angie's workplace just minutes after it's believed that he killed her. Angie's friends have reported to police that the couple's relationship was toxic and Jared was very controlling. Jared's bond is currently set at $500,000. This schoolboy stabbed his teacher to death in front of a classroom full of students. 61-year-old Anne McGuire was a Spanish teacher teaching in Leeds. She'd actually worked at the school for 40 years and she was only 5 months off retirement. However, in April 2014, something absolutely horrific happened. One of her students was 15-year-old Will Cornick. He'd always been described as a smart student who never really caused any trouble. Classmates regarded him as a polite student, but after he got diagnosed with diabetes, his personality seemed to change. In 2013, he tried to join the army, but because of his diagnosis, he was rejected. Being in the army had been his dream, so this was really upsetting for him. After failing to complete his Spanish homework, he was given detention by Anne. He also expressed a wish to her that he wanted to drop Spanish, but she wouldn't let him, which only angered him more. He began to develop a deep-rooted grudge against Anne. Shockingly, he reportedly messaged his friends on Facebook asking if one of them would kill her for him for £10. During one school day, halfway through his Spanish class, Will decided to get up and attack Anne with a knife. The classmates watched on in horror as he chased her out of the classroom. When there, another teacher heard her screams and tried to shield Anne from any more blows from him. Will then allegedly returned to his class and told his classmates how it was a shame that he hadn't killed her. However, Anne did actually pass away from her injuries. Will later admitted that he did plan also to kill 2 other teachers. One of them was actually pregnant at the time. He's been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years.
Let's talk about what happened to 13-year-old Rachel Mellon Skimp. She was born on October 13th of 1982 and lived in Melrose Park in Illinois. At the age of 3, her parents divorced and her dad moved to Dallas and her mom stayed with her in Illinois. Eventually, her mom started seeing a man named Vincent, and eventually they got married and had 2 children together. Rachel was described as a bubbly person with a great sense of humor. She was the life of the party and was always the most beautiful girl in the room. On January 30th of 1996, Rachel was at school and was having a normal school day, and as the day went on, her friends noticed that she was crying by her locker, so they went to go ask what was wrong. She said she was having a problem, but that she was going to fix it herself, and that is all she said. The following day, on Wednesday, January 31st, Rachel decided to stay home from school because she was having a sore throat and was feeling kind of sick. So her mom left to work, and her stepfather was going to stay home because he wasn't working at the moment. Rachel called her grandma to thank her for the Christmas gifts that she had sent her, and this call took from 4 to 5 minutes, and her grandma said that this phone call was completely normal, nothing out of the ordinary, but she did notice that at one part in the phone call, Rachel was kind of quiet, and her grandma said, "Is he there?" referring to her stepfather, and she said yes, and then Rachel told her grandmother that she needed to hang up. Her stepfather stated that they played the Nintendo before she decided to go up to her room and take a nap. So once she was upstairs taking a nap, he decided to take the family dog for a walk, even though it was 20 degrees below zero. So he left at 2:30 p.m. and then ended up coming at 3 p.m. He said the reason that he took a while is because the dog broke free from the leash and he was not able to get him, so he just figured that the family dog would just find his way back eventually. At 3:15 p.m., Vincent's youngest daughter comes home and she goes straight to Rachel's room to greet her, and that's when she realizes that Rachel's not even there. So the youngest daughter tells her dad that it seems that Rachel is missing, that she's not even in her room, but he just doesn't seem to care. So once her mom gets home, the youngest daughter tells her that Rachel's missing from her room, so that is when her mom decides to call 911 and report her as missing. Stay tuned for part 2.
Put your feet off my table, please.
My feet hurt, man. I don't know why.
Get them off my table.
So up until this point, it seems like the detective held little stock in Ryan's newest version of events. I mean, a story about getting shot in the eye and living to tell the tale just a few hours later is a bit outlandish. But as Ryan continues to give confusing answers and display increasingly erratic behavior, the detective finally takes a closer look at his wounds.
Let me see your nose. Put your legs down. Put your legs down. Bring your face closer.
Oh, my head hurts.
Okay. Yeah, be right back.
After this abrupt exit, the man returns with a totally different demeanor. He's worried. He tells Ryan that someone is going to check him out to make sure he's okay.
Hey, Ryan?
Yes?
I got the fire department coming to take a look at it. They're going to probably take you to the hospital.
You taking me to the hospital?
Yeah, we're going to take you to the hospital.
Why?
Well, if you've seen your face and the way you're doing things, it doesn't make sense right now, okay? We're just going to make sure you're okay.
I just want to go back to bed, man.
Well, that's the problem. If you have some kind of head injury, you shouldn't be sleeping, okay? Well, sit down. There you go.
As the two wait for help, Ryan basically repeats his story about the shooting, saying that he just wanted to go to sleep after being shot in the eyeball.
I think I only got shot once in the eyeball.
And then you just wanted to go to sleep?
Huh?
Soon, others enter the room to take a closer look at Ryan. I believe it's the detective saying, "You're not going to believe this one."
Captain, you're not going to believe this one. I can't believe it either. You're right. I've already heard the story. I can't believe it. This is just my observations that
This might be an entrance, this might be an exit, this might be into his eye. And he's acting like he has a serious head injury, which would make sense.
So now all the puzzle pieces are starting to fall together. A single explanation appears that nobody would have expected in a million years, and it's one that they probably hope isn't actually true. That's because if Ryan really had been shot in the head, that would mean that they neglected to get him proper medical treatment while he waited in the police car and underwent this lengthy interrogation, which, when all was said and done, allegedly added up to about 6 hours. 6 hours where Ryan would have been sustaining permanent brain damage damage, 6 hours where he could have gotten help, but instead was getting worse. Well, spoiler alert, it was true. Ryan had actually been shot in the eye, and his account of the break-in and shooting by a man named Richie and his dad was 100% real, even if he couldn't exactly get the details straight due to his injury.
Are there guns around?
This kid Eric did it. I don't know how he did it exactly. I might have been shot. I don't know.
Location of the emergency.
My daughter is missing.
What's your address, ma'am?
She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carly, Carlie.
And last name?
Brucia, Brucia.
The footage you just watched shows the last known moments of 11-year-old Carly Brucia as she was abducted in broad daylight by a violent predator. Despite being reported missing by her parents within half an hour of her disappearance, Carly's case would ultimately go down in history as one of the most depraved crimes against a young girl. It all started on January 31st, 2004. Carly had spent the night at a friend's house, but the following day was Super Bowl Sunday, so she wanted to get back home in time to watch the game. She told her friend's mother that she was allowed to make the walk back home on her own and departed around 6 p.m. However, after she left, the concerned parent reached out to Carly's mother, Susan, and informed her that Carly was walking the mile back home alone. Susan said she didn't feel comfortable with her daughter walking even just a few blocks alone, so she sent her husband and Carly's stepfather, Steve Kanzler, to find Carly and drive her the rest of the way home. However, as Steve went up and down the route Carly would have walked, he couldn't find her anywhere, and that's when the nightmare really began. Steve continued to drive around for over an hour, praying that he had somehow simply missed Carly, but when he returned home and she still wasn't there, it became clear that something was seriously wrong. Susan later said of this moment that she instantly felt something terrible had happened to Carly, saying, "In my heart, in my mind, I knew." Susan and Steve left the house together to search again, shouting Carly's name out the car window as they drove down the road. They stopped briefly to investigate a wooded area and noticed a red tow truck drive slowly by them. Then they continued retracing Carly's steps and went to her friend's house to check there. And much to their surprise, they saw the same red truck parked out front. It struck them both as very odd, and upon realizing that Carly wasn't there either, Susan decided it was time to call for help. The frantic mother dialed 911 around 7:30 that evening. She couldn't hide the absolute terror in her voice.
911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing.
What's your address, ma'am? And your phone number? Okay. Has she been missing before?
No, she had a fight with her girlfriend. She decided to walk home, and we've been driving around for about an hour and a half. And it's now an hour and a half walk. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
It was at 6 o'clock, Steve. Around 6 o'clock.
And she was at a friend's house?
Yeah.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carly, Carlie.
And last name?
Brucia, Brucia. She's just shy of 5 feet.
Okay. Do you know how much she weighs?
She's around 120 pounds.
Okay, what color hair does she have?
Dirty blonde.
And what color eyes?
Blue.
Following the heartbreaking call, police immediately issued a BOLO, or Be on the Lookout alert for Carly, and searched the surrounding area for 4.5 hours, but found nothing. Meanwhile, Carly's family and friends got to work creating missing persons flyers with her face on them, and they began handing them out the next morning. But something happened during this time that struck a few people as suspicious. Carly's stepfather, Steve, allegedly visited a local equipment rental business to hand out flyers and asked one of the employees if he could purchase drugs in a couple of days after this whole thing blew over. The employee thought it was a very odd thing to say when his stepdaughter was missing, so he contacted the authorities. Detectives also felt that something was off with Steve, so they brought him in for questioning. He stated that he'd been at home the entire time with Susan, which she was able to corroborate. After fully verifying his alibi, he was cleared as a suspect, but Steve did offer them another name, Ron Choquette. Ron was the owner of the red tow truck, and he'd apparently been dating the mother of Carly's friend for 2 months. He was home the night Carly slept over, and at one point, he was the only adult present. So naturally, Steve informed police about how he'd noticed Ron's red truck.